Good. All right, we're back live again, and we're recording at the same time because we seem to have some technical difficulties with the bandwidth here, and so more of that later. But to piggyback on Mark's observations, his tenure as an investigator with Long Beach PD, people need to be aware that every single deputy-involved shooting is treated like a homicide. And it's with the assumption that we do not know if the deputies were justified in their use of deadly force. So our Homicide Bureau does a thorough investigation. We invite the Inspector General to do the walkthrough on the shooting scene with us. The DA's office, they have a Justice System Integrity Division. They do the walkthrough with us. If we have doubts about it, we invite the Attorney General's office, we invite the FBI, the Civil Rights Division, and I have done that during my tenure. People may not believe that, but we actually, a prime example was the deputy involved shooting of Andres Guardado. One of the first calls we made was to the Attorney General's office. This is before the new law. We wanted them to actually monitor our investigation, and they declined, saying it wasn't really their cup of tea and they didn't have the personnel. So, but we presented the offer there. And then the FBI Justice System Integrity Division did take us up on it. So they've been monitoring and assisting that investigation with us. But all of that happens. Then there's a critical incident review that happens within the first typically 2 weeks. And Homicide is furiously trying to investigate, interview all the witnesses, gather all the evidence available, body-worn cameras, surveillance video, all this is happening. And then we have to interview the deputy who are witnesses, the deputies who are subjects. And this is where it gets delicate because there's laws that we have to comply with. The Gates-Johnson decision, Peace Officer Bill of Rights, for example, and obviously the Fourth Amendment, all of these things come into play. And Fifth Amendment when it comes to interviewing the subjects. Because at some point, if the investigators believe the deputies had criminal culpability, they can't demand an answer for them because that'd be a compelled statement that would violate their Fifth Amendment right to counsel and freedom from self-incrimination. So about the 2 week marks, the executives do a critical incident review. They look at all the evidence, and at this point, if it was what was considered out of policy and legally questionable, the subject deputies may be relieved of duty. They may be sent home. They may be put in an administrative assignment depending on the incident. And then there's an executive force review after that, and they decide whether or not this was within policy. But we have to wait for the DA to also weigh in and decide if it was legally justified or not. So all of these things are going on. So we don't exonerate ourselves in some vacuum where no one has input. There's so many sets of eyes on this thing. And then the community themselves, they've been helping. They do their own cell phone videos. They have their things. What doesn't help, though, is when they put a false narrative out there that's really not supported, and it's obvious they're just trying to whip up the crowd into a frenzy, and the facts don't support it. So that, unfortunately, does not help the community. It just sows mistrust with law enforcement. And ultimately, when the facts are presented, then they just kind of skittle away into the darkness and go off to the next, fake story.
Sheriff, can I ask you, are the deputies being judged on different components of the use of force? For instance, the actual use of force itself, the tactics, that kind of thing?
Well, there was another Assembly Bill, I think 392, that redefined what kind, and not instead of objectively reasonable, it changed the standard to necessary. Was it necessary? And that brought into the totality of the circumstances. And I think, Mark, you had already retired at this point.
Yeah.
That one standard changed. But our department, we've always been guided by reverence for human life. So our expectation is that decisions made or to preserve human life at all cost. And there's some points where you can't because of the actions of the suspect. I mean, if they go into a schoolyard shooting at kids, every cop that shows up, we expect them to stop that attack at all costs. And we have done that. And that's just, part of it. It's a tragedy for everybody involved. And there's people that think there's trigger happy cops. No, a deputy involved shooting may end your career. You know, they suffer from high levels of PTSD, suicide rates, and on top of the administrative and legal circumstances, it's a miracle that we convince people to still be cops because it's fraught with so much liability and danger out there. Just a perspective.
You know, one thing I want to say is that what the sheriff was saying is it shows a lot of transparency. I know one thing in Long Beach that was going on when I was there, and I don't think it's changed, but I think Long Beach is the only police department in California, if I'm not mistaken, that after an officer involved shooting, the officer himself goes over with his attorney and the homicide detectives, and they sit down around a computer, and the officer types out his report with, if he needs help, with the help of a homicide detective or his union rep. So the report is they're kind of, if I were to use the word help, they're guided into what they're going to write in their statements, and that is something I've never heard of in any other agency that they do, and that's unique to Long Beach, and it was there when Luna was chief. I don't know now that he's not chief there.
It's still the same policies. Actually, it's not how you said. It's actually the officer. Every officer, witness officers, and the shooting officers are responsible for their own report. Long Beach has a very unique officer-involved shooting policy. I don't believe it's changed, where the officer is responsible for his or her own report. The attorney is not with them. The homicide detective is not with them. What happens is they write the report, and then the report is reviewed by the homicide detective and or the supervisor. When I left, or when I was leaving, the homicide supervisors would look at the report, review the report, and then make their recommendations. And then the shooting officer would change it or not. And that's a reality. And Long Beach Police Department is the only agency that I know of that does that.
Yeah, I was involved in a couple of officer-involved shootings, and that's exactly what happened. I sat there with the help of the homicide detectives and the attorney if I had any questions when I did my report.
That's kind of
So
in 2022. That's kind of a scary. I could conceive of that maybe in 1982, but in 2022, with so much things that have happened, and the push for transparency, accountability, post Rodney King, post Colts Commission, post all these different things, and now the George Floyd movement, everything is a drive towards accountability, and that seems like a big step in the wrong direction.
They haven't changed.
And
Wow.
just saying that Long Beach is the only department that does this says a lot.
There's over 400 police departments in the state of California. FYI.
So before I go on to the next question, I mean, you all are sitting here for a reason. Mm-hmm. Current and former law enforcement of Long Beach, and your opponent is the former chief of police of Long Beach. Do you believe, and this is to you all, do you believe that that same style of policing would enter into the sheriff's, or do you think that he would be able to step into his opponent, step into a role and because these policies, they sound like they're policies that are sound policies that are for the betterment of the community. Do you think that his opponent would be able to step into that, or that he would be bringing his policing style?
In my opinion, his policing style worked great for him in Long Beach. He was never held accountable.
You have to pass the mic around.
Right now we're going off this to speak louder.
In Long Beach, these policies that he implemented worked great for him because he was never held accountable for anything he did, from the Tiger Tech scandal, from all these lawsuits not promoting minorities. It worked perfect for him. Why wouldn't he bring that to the sheriff's department?
Was that okay? Well, that question was directed toward me. I have no idea what policies he would take to the sheriff's department. I don't think his leadership skills are such that if he thought that he could make the policies better or not, or check to see if everyone else was living up to those policies, he's not that guy. He doesn't have those leadership skills. He's going to let the sheriff department do what they want to do, and you know, unless something is brought to everyone's attention before he'll react. And even then, he's probably going to only react based on the information that's given to him from those who work up under him. So I don't think he's. That question is a hard one to answer.
Well, I would say, why would he change now? You know, it would be interesting for someone, let's say, if you include from deputy chief to commander, that's about 20 years in leadership. Now, all of a sudden, he's going to go to a different department because he changed his uniform and badge and implement policies that he never even advocated for over 20 years.
That's a very
So no, I don't. I believe in the fact that he's not being held accountable, like these guys said. You know, if people not held accountable, they're gonna keep on doing it. And so because he's getting a pass by the media and other local politicians, why wouldn't he not try to implement that same culture that he had in Long Beach into the sheriff department?
That's a very good point.
Wait. Additionally, as he made his trek through the promotional from sergeant all the way to chief, he assimilated to that culture. And he became a part of that culture. And he used that culture to promote people just like him or that he wanted near him. The people that didn't promote minorities, the people that went after minorities and women. That's who he is. He's a follower. He took a police department that was rated one of the best in the nation, and by the time he left, they were last or close to the bottom. He failed during the pandemic. I live in the city of Long Beach. Had it not been for the LA County Sheriffs and Sheriff Villanueva, we would have lost downtown. My brother was a commander there while this was going on. I have several friends and mentees there, and I was terrified for all of them. He also, including the pandemic, there's the Tiger text that Albert talked about, where the command staff were passing back thousands, hundreds of thousands of messages between them, and they don't know what that is. One of the main reasons they got the Tiger text was to keep the information away from the district attorney's office. I was in Homicide. I was one of those people that refused to use Tiger text, and I never used Tiger text for that reason. And I told them it's illegal. You have to give everything. Everything is discoverable. But they ignored me and they did their thing. So he allowed that to happen. Once it was found out, then he got rid of it. And that's the kind of guy he is. He will surround people, he will surround himself with people that will take care of him, that will do his bidding for him. And then when the bottom falls out, he blames them like he did during the pandemic. He blamed.
Can you describe what Tiger Text says for our audience?
Tiger Text is a app that once you send the text, at some point it automatically deletes. A day, an hour, 2 days, whatever. I believe you can set it, but it automatically deletes off the servers and everything, and it can never be recovered. So you can talk about whatever and whoever, and it's never discovered again after it's gone. During the pandemic, when the city went to hell, if you will, after the sheriffs came in and saved us.
Can one of you, either you or you, share what that was? Because that's news to me that the sheriff came in. Because maybe I just didn't read that part in the newspaper.
Well, it was in the newspaper. It was on the news. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, the next day, he blamed the inaction of his officers on the field supervisors, and at that point, he lost his department.
Why did the sheriff? Like, at what point? And then I want to get back to something that Darrin said a few moments ago. But why did the sheriff come in after the pandemic after the uprisings?
Let me answer that first, and then go back to what Quincy and Mark have been referencing. As the sheriff of LA County, I'm the mutual aid coordinator for both Los Angeles and Orange County in times of disasters and emergencies. And so I'm a representative of the State Office of Emergency Management, and the state relies on me to decide locally where our resources are going to be deployed to, because a lot of different places were going off at once. For example, we had Long Beach, we had Santa Monica, we had Fairfax, we had Beverly Hills. We had a lot of attempts in sheriff's department jurisdictions that they all failed because we took immediate action. We arrested people that are involved in vandalism and looting and arson, and we distinguished between them and people who were protesting peacefully. And that's what we wanted them to do, and we gave them the space they needed to do that. Other people went under cover of the protest to cause havoc. So we were deployed. We sent an entire mobile field force to Santa Monica. We sent another mobile field force to Long Beach, and we followed with the second one. We sent the National Guard, and they had no plan. They had absolutely no idea what to do, except to tell the Long Beach officers on the ground not to do anything. And they were, I mean, I feel bad for them because they're seeing their own city that they serve being burned down while their command staff is telling them not to intervene. That's not what we do on the sheriff's department. All of our deputies, I told them, go get them wherever they're at. I don't care what city they're in. If it's within LA County, I expect you to go get them and assist the local police department. And that's what we did.
I did look at some of the reports that came out from Long Beach PD of the arrests that took place, and it would say like 58 people were arrested, and then it would list some of those arrests, and what it looked like, the ones that were listed, it was like 12 people listed. They were kind of local or Long Beach surrounding. Is it true that many of the looters that came into Long Beach that you were there to remedy were from outside of our local area?
You had a mixture of both.
Okay.
During that period of unrest, going all the way through the protests at South LA Station, we arrested a bunch of people at South LA, I think over 50. We found one person who lived within a mile of South LA Station. We found people from Massachusetts, from Florida, from Missouri, from San Francisco. It was like a tourist destination. Go join, the activists and go protest at South LA Station. And the local residents were telling us, we're sick and tired of these people. We need to get home to our families. And these are the Black and Latino residents of South LA. They say they were fed up with Antifa, Black Lives Matter. Anybody who came there to protest and disrupt their community, they didn't want anything to do with them.
I think also if you look at the arrests weren't done for any type of major crimes. I think most of the arrests, if you look at the statistics, were done for curfew. They didn't arrest any looters, any violent crime. It was all curfew.
Yeah,
that curfew. Those people could have been cited for. It could have been because earlier in the day they would have the protests, so it could have been a mixture of the innocent people doing a lawful protest and people staying out late. But the majority of the people arrested were cited for curfew violations. If you look at the stats.
Our security team, I went there myself in person to Long Beach, and I was there at midnight chasing looters through alleys. The one that looted the CVS on, I think, 7th and Pine. And with my security detail, of course, they were scared out of their mind. Oh my God, the sheriff,
No, I was referring to the arrest that Long Beach did.
The arrests that we did were looters.
Yeah,
and
Long Beach was all curfew.
And unfortunately, I believe the chief and the mayor told the command staff, do not allow your officers to intervene in the looting. And there's tons of footage of looters going through buildings, and the cops are right in front, basically handcuffed. And the wrong set of people are handcuffed. Instead of the looters, it was the cops. And that is bad. But let me circle back to about change and transformative change. 2004, I was a sergeant. And I'd been a sergeant for 4 years. And I came across the corruption and illegal conduct of one Paul Tanaka and Lee Baca. I'm a sergeant. And I wrote them wrote a memo, and I addressed it to all chiefs and all commanders of the department. And I told them that what they were doing by basically gaming the promotional system to reward their cronies and punish their rivals is illegal, unlawful. It's going to lead to the downfall of the organization, and it needs to stop. and they were targeting primarily Latinos was their focus because they were severely underrepresented at the rank structure. And I laid it out. I put it on email, and everybody laughed. All the command staff, oh my God, look at this foolish Villanueva. What does he think he is? Who does he think he is? And so that killed my career. And they told me, yeah, your career is over. But the point is, I met corruption. I confronted corruption, and I stood my ground. Everyone else acquiesced and accommodated corruption because it benefited them personally. That's the difference. Go to 2000 or 1998 with the unions supporting Block when he'd already passed away. And again, that was union corruption. I challenged them on it, and ultimately we were able to create another union, and that union pushed ALAS into being the union it is today, which is a far more responsive and ethical organization than it was in 1998. So when I'm faced with a situation that I believe is corrupt, my instinct is to challenge it and go after it. Not, well, I'm looking at my bottom line is what matters to me, not the organization or the community. I did the exact opposite of what Luna's done. And so now as sheriff, I've been confronted with major issues. Do I set foot on Venice, or do I let it fall apart because the city decided they're not going to do anything? No, I set foot in Venice. Mr. Luna would never set foot in Venice in his wildest dreams. That is a difference between he and I.
Well, thank you for just the clarity in the role of the sheriff. I live in Long Beach, and it was a very frightening moment to see what was going on in our city. So the idea of you actually running down an alley chasing looters is very interesting to me.
I kind of limped because I can't do very good running now.
Yeah,
but we
but
caught him.
But it is good to hear that from you because someone had shared. I'm like, really? But going, Darrin, you had made a comment earlier. Well, two things. You had made a comment about that we need a strong. Well, you didn't. I don't know. You didn't necessarily say strong, but you basically in your statement that it's necessary that whoever steps into the role of sheriff or continues the role of sheriff, that it needs to be a strong person.
Yes.
It's clear you have a strong personality, at least in the leadership that community sees, right? And we got some other words for you other than strong personality. Yet you
all charitable, of course.
Yeah, they're not that great. But you also talked about the narrative, and there's three things that come up when your name comes up. One, that you're completely opposed to oversight, especially in the role that's happening with the county supervisors right now. You refuse to believe that there's deputy gangs, although I've seen some of your other commentary where you've spoken on that, and that you are targeting political candidates that are in disagreement with you or no longer want you to be present. I know that's a lot, but tell us, are those true?
For the record, she pulls no punches. Have you noticed that? She just put one right out there. I'll tell you this. Very good questions. I'm happy. Let me go to the first one, which is about oversight. And the Board of Supervisors always wanted a puppet sheriff who is dependent or subordinate to the board. They do not want an equal to them who can be a check and balance to the unlimited power and authority of the board. Remember, they're the executive and legislative branch of county government. They appoint 34 of the 37 department heads. They oversee budgets of now $44.6 billion. That's greater than the budget of I think 40 of the states in the nation. 5 people that don't answer to anyone. But they're the one telling everyone that I don't like oversight. I need effective oversight. I need a good inspector general who is objective, neutral, and his job is to try to improve the operation of the department. I need that third person perspective because internally sometimes we don't see things that someone else from outside the organization can see. But we don't have that with our current Oversight Commission and the Inspector General. They were appointed to be political attack dogs for the sheriff they don't like, and when the sheriff they do like is in office, like my predecessor, they go radio silent. They have nothing to say. And that ties into The second one on deputy gangs. Supposedly, these reports that are written, it's a 50-year problem. But why did it become a crisis under my watch? What happened on my watch that elevated it to the crisis level? Where was all this outrage when McDonald was sheriff? Where was the outrage of the board, the inspector general, the oversight commission? They had nothing to say about it because literally their guy was in office. And then you look at 50 years. We've now had 5 cases where there was lawsuits, where there was allegations of deputy gangs. 5 times they've been thrown out of court with prejudice. Because when it comes to, okay, you can claim all you want in a lawsuit, at some point you need to show your evidence to the court so it can be weighed. They failed 5 times in a row with prejudice, even the attorneys being sanctioned because they have no evidence to support the allegations that they made in the lawsuit. And now today we had another deposition that I'm aware of where all doom and gloom and how horrible the sheriff's department is and how I'm hiding everything, and they offered absolutely nothing under oath, which means now, are they going to recant all those public statements they boldly announced that we have this big problem? Probably not, but that's how the game is being played. And I've asked them, when I created the policy that bans the formation or participation in any group that harms other people, is constitutionally sound. I can't go beyond that because then your women's softball league all of a sudden becomes a gang. Did you know that?
Oh, wow.
What's the difference? You can't, First Amendment, you cannot regulate the content of speech. No matter how offensive it may be, as an employer, there has to be a nexus to the workplace. But if a guy put on a tattoo on his calf 30 years ago and he has a spotless record, do you think he's a gang member? That's what they're trying to sell. So when I say no, I'm sorry. There are social groups, there are cliques. Most are very, very benign. Some of them are a little rougher on the edges. They like to go partying in the river. And that's probably the extent of it. I've asked the board, if you have evidence, please present it to us. I've asked the Oversight Commission, you got evidence, please present it. I'll be more than happy. And everything we've done, we don't hide misconduct. We actually investigate it. We take action. I fired 4 people out of East LA Station for a fight that happened at Kennedy Hall that made the news. I suspended 22. I turned around and transferred out 36. My first day in office, I yanked out of command the East LA Station captain. That was my first act as sheriff. I could not telegraph more what I thought about people who were not good supervisors, good leaders, if they allow deputies to basically run roughshod over their administration.
If I could just, and how much had been done in the previous 134 years?
Absolutely nothing.
Repeat the question.
Yeah. And the question is, what has been done prior to me taking office the previous 168 years? Absolutely nothing. Boys will be boys. And in reality, there's truth, yeah.
Same
but
board.
Yeah, same board. But you add alcohol, you have cliques within a station may not like each other for whatever reason. One person dated the other person's ex-wife. Cardinal sin in law enforcement. They're probably true in Long Beach as well. See, yeah. See.
They marry each other.
But that's the point. They're all social in nature, just like in any large paramilitary organization. They're going to exist. Long Beach, I understand, has Northtown Rangers. Who would have thought of that? And but does that make them a gang? No. If they're involved in criminal activity and they're all united for the purpose of engaging in criminal activity, 3 or more, then now we're looking towards we have a gang. But in our department, I have yet to find a person who links all the dots together, say these group of deputies are all engaged in this criminal activity and they all share a tattoo. I'd say, yeah, I'd be more than happy to address that. And we've asked and asked to the point we're blue in the face because it's a political campaign. It's not reality. It's very effective for the people that get all their info on a swipe on their phone. They read the screaming headline and that's it. It'll say, deputy gangs run amok, comma, lawsuit alleges. They don't even get to the lawsuit alleges part.
Since we're on Facebook and I'm on to the Facebook every day, everybody who says deputy gangs is a white kid.
Yes.
Every single one.
In fact, they have me as the lead bandito gang member covered in tattoos.
Take your
Yeah,
shirt off.
and they like the gospel truth.
Disappearing on this.
Yeah, disappearing
Yeah.
henna tattoos. That's it.
Tiger wrap.
So when you targeting your political candidates, and then I have a connecting question
Ooh.
for the.
Can I just finish one question on the gang stuff? If you do become aware of the existence of a gang, what is your action?
Well, one, we have to investigate the crime. If there's a crime involved, we're going to investigate it thoroughly. Our internal criminal investigation bureau, our public corruption unit as well, they'll investigate and they'll present the case to the district attorney, to the attorney general, or to the FBI. And we have done that on our own personnel. In fact, the case with the CCWs, that scandal, that was our own public corruption unit that turned the trigger towards our own personnel because they were engaged in alleged conduct that part of it has a potential of being criminal. They took action, and we do that at every rank. We don't hold one set of rules for the brass and one for the line staff like all past sheriffs did. You got to the rank of captain in our department, you were like the mafia, considered a made person where you were untouchable. I broke that barrier and said, no, everyone is subjected to the same rule of law, the same rules of accountability. And that's pretty much the genesis of all that lawsuits against our administration is from people that can't stand the fact that they have to follow the law, just like everybody else. But we're going into the targeting
your opposition.
public corruption unit. One thing, and I know this is true with Long Beach, we don't investigate people, we investigate crimes. So if, say, you allege that he committed a crime, our job is to investigate the crime. He might say during the course of investigation, yeah, but you helped me. Okay, well, we're still investigating the crime. We don't initiate it like, I don't like him, so I'm going to investigate him. That's not how anything is initiated. So if you go to the Sheila Kuehl Peace Over Violence investigation, classic example. A whistleblower from the MTA complained that there was shady contract going on between Sheila Kuehl and her buddy, Patty Wiggins, on the Peace Over Violence board. Patty Giggins. Yeah, Giggins, my bad. And so we investigate in good faith, and what do? We invited in the Attorney General. The FBI and the Assistant U.S. Attorney's Office already has an investigation with Mark Ridley Thomas, so there's kind of a lot of things going on at once. But what we're not going to do is not investigate crime. That is not what I signed up for. I don't look the other way. I don't care who the person is. If there's an allegation of crime, we're going to investigate it. We may end up exonerating the person, as we have done. In fact, there was a division chief under Jim McDonnell who the inspector general accused of committing perjury in a case, lying under oath. And he wanted us to investigate it. I had just my first year in office, so we took our folks from public corruption, and they did a thorough investigation. And trust me, this guy was not a good person. He destroyed countless careers and marriages and just destroyed lives and had a sadistic pleasure of doing it. So if we found him guilty, it would not have broken anybody's heart. But we did the right thing. We went by the evidence. And it turned out he prepared himself incompetently to testify, but there was no criminal intent behind what he did. So we ended up exonerating literally the bad guy because it was the right thing to do. And so that hopefully will answer your question. So when someone complains that I go after my enemies, no, we investigate crime. And that includes Max Huntsman, who's now a twice named felony suspect. Both cases are now with the Attorney General. And it is what it is. You volunteer to engage in criminal conduct. Don't complain when the sheriff comes to investigate your actions. We're not investigating you. We're investigating the allegations that you did something bad. Don't take offense to it. And actually, it is the rule of law. Government Code Section 25303 says specifically the Board of Supervisors shall not obstruct the investigative function of the sheriff. Can't get plainer than that.
With Measure A on the ballot, it seems like that would disrupt that
Oh yeah, they even tried to put a disclaimer in the language of Measure A. This won't obstruct the investigative function of the sheriff. Yeah, right. Yeah, like pouring a gallon of Drano into your gallon of milk and feeding it to your kid won't interrupt the digestive, tract of your kid. Yeah, that I'm not buying that at all.
For people who are like watching and unaware, Measure A is on the ballot, and it's basically a yes vote gives the Board of Supervisors the authority to remove the sheriff from office. And would really recommend that people take the time to look into that and think about what that means, because then why are we voting? Why are we voting? Yet, Measure A, it should be on your sample ballot. Take a look at that. So I have a question that relates to the myths about you. Or actually, I don't think it necessarily relates to the myth, but it gives you an opportunity to squash it.
Off the record, no, for the record, I don't kill babies and drink their blood. Let's establish that off the bat.
It's clear you're an independent thinker, right? I mean, that's clear. It's clear that you like strong personality and you stand for what's right. Yet, if reelected, how are you going to repair some of the rifts that have been created, not only with the Board of Supervisors, but community? How do you plan on re-bridging the relationships in community?
Very good question. And in fact, I had the exact same question asked to me by Telemundo and KTLA today.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I mean, almost verbatim. This is very good. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I've done 104 town halls throughout the county in 4 years. I've crisscrossed the county so many times. I've spoken in person to tens of thousands of people. Something the Board of Supervisors will never, ever do. I can say there is no mistrust between the community and the Sheriff's Department. There is a huge amount of mistrust between the political establishment and the Sheriff's Department because they're afraid of accountability. So they've been spending a lot of time and energy denouncing the Sheriff's Department, but they're not doing it because they're getting feedback from the community. They're doing it for their own self-interest. There's a tiny group of activists that don't like law enforcement no matter what, and they're going to always not like law enforcement. They want to get rid of the jails, the prisons. They want to get rid of the LAPD. Some of them even get voted into LA City Council. Imagine that. I have a supervisor who wants to get rid of the Sheriff's Department and Probation Department. She said literally, I do not want them to exist. So when that riff, they're the ones that have been telling the community, you can't trust the Sheriff's Department. But I go to the community. In fact, I was on a National Night Out. I went to 4 different cities. I went to Linwood, Compton, West Covina, and can't remember the 4th one. Huh? Was it Montebello? And the reception we got was just super positive everywhere. And you realize if the establishment would just shut up for a second and let the community interact with law enforcement, there's not that mistrust. Everything that's being sold as mistrust is driven by the political establishment. Really. They just need to turn down their volume a bit and let the community interact with the Sheriff's Department, and they can help. They have an important function because they're supposed to represent their constituents. But how do you represent your constituents and demonize the entity that keeps them alive and safe? You can't do that.
And
oh yeah, and I've been rattling off like crazy.
To like wind up, but I have a.
If they would jump in on, like, do they agree with that sentiment?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna. Do you in this each one of you? I mean, do you agree to the sentiment? But based upon like your level of experience, right? Someone who's retired 7 years, someone who was terminated for some very strange reasons. You still current?
No,
Former. How long?
About 6 years ago.
6 years, and someone's current. Couple things, so that we can go ahead and start wrapping up. What would you want to see? Because I mean, he's still not perfect.
No one is.
But what would you like to see in the next sheriff, whether he stays there or there's a new sheriff? What would you like to see based upon your experience and knowledge, or what would you not like to see? And where do you agree or disagree with him? So kind of if we can go around.
You know,
And state your name again.
Mark McQuire, retired, Homicide, Long Beach PD. I think what happens with the sheriff's message to the community is that people take it personally. And when I was coming up, my dad used to say to me whenever he would get on us, don't listen to how I'm saying it, listen to what I'm saying. And he says a lot of things that are 100% true. The community, he takes care of the community. Between the two candidates, if you're asking me, he's a leader, he's firm, he makes a decision, he sticks to it. I worked with and for his opponent, and he's completely opposite. The sheriff makes a decision, he sticks to it, and he follows it through. I like that. That's kind of how I am. You know, I've never shared this with anybody, but, you know, when I first met him or got the opportunity to meet him because of all the negative stories in the media, I thought one thing, probably just like you did. And when you meet him and you talk to him from a law enforcement perspective and a community activist to some degree in social justice and taking care of my city in Long Beach, we need the police. We need strong leaders like him. Robert Luna is not a strong leader. Whoever the strongest person in the room around him, that's who's going to run that sheriff department. Okay? That's not this man here. And his policies, we've come to him with policies, with ideas as black men, as community members, and he listens. I've been to some of his community meetings, and he sits there. He doesn't have a whole bunch of security, and he talks to people, and it's a back and forth. It's not most law enforcement where law enforcement is talking at you, not talking with you or talking to you. He doesn't do that. He engages people and expects them to engage back. Robert Luna doesn't do that. Robert Luna speaks off of a script, and if he goes off script, it's a wrap. It's over. He can't go any further. He's a real, us cops, he's a real cop. So he knows how the game is played. He knows the laws. He knows communities, and Robert Luna does not. I would really like to see him get reelected because I think that my belief is if Robert Luna becomes the sheriff of LA County, our crime rate is going to triple. You're going to have mass exodus at the sheriff department. Our communities are going to suffer. The black communities are going to suffer because Robert Luna is uncomfortable around black people unless he knows them. If he doesn't know them, he's uncomfortable. This man is not like that. I think the county will suffer if he is not the sheriff of LA County. And that's the way I feel.
Well, I would start off like this. You know, I think a lot of people probably see me sitting here and they probably think, oh, he's just a disgruntled, bitter officer that, you know, Robert Luna terminated. You know, in actuality, I met with Robert Luna first at a community meeting. We had two candidates, and despite, you know, I felt what he done to my life and my career, that I was still open to sit down and meet with him to hear maybe time has passed and, you know, he has changed and, you know, he has a different perspective. And I would have been willing to sit here and say, hey, you know what? You know, I met with Robert Luna despite what happened in the past. I think that he has came around and, you know, he has different, you know, a different perspective and character and all that. And that didn't happen because when I brought up some things that happened unethical in my situation and other people who have filed complaints in Long Beach PD, you know, his first thing was to do was to lash out and call me a liar. I know y'all see the soft-spoken Robert Luna, but there's a reason why they didn't allow cameras and video in that community meeting. And then, you know, I met the sheriff, and like Mark said, I was like, this is about to be a 30-second conversation because I'm about to ask him some questions, and based on what I was hearing in the media, I didn't think he's going to be open to any other things that me and myself and my good friend that's the activist Dane Crawford, we had suggestions regarding the black community, and things of that nature. And he was completely open to the point, there's a pamphlet out with some of the things that we brought up and suggest in that meeting. So, I think the biggest experience for me, the biggest eye-opening experience for me is being able, despite what you're hearing about people, really, if you've never spoken to them and you dislike them, at least give them a chance to have that conversation, because you might find out, like I said, I was expecting like a 1-minute conversation, and 4 hours later, we had talked about the community, law enforcement, kids, all Dodgers, you name it. And I definitely think what you have in this race is like Mark said. I think if Robert Luna is sheriff, the strongest personality in that room will be running the department. One of the last conversations I had with Robert Luna, I brought up because I was accusing somebody in the department that was a racist, and the department refused to investigate him. Instead, they investigated me, and that led to my termination. But I told Robert Luna that same person was saying racist things about him, and he promoted him all the way up to deputy chief. And his only reply was, he said, I didn't know. How can you be on the department with this guy? Everyone knew from the time he was an officer, a sergeant, a lieutenant, a commander to deputy chief, knew he was a known racist. And you thought you ignored there were complaints. I filed complaints. I filed a complaint when he was a lieutenant. So since me, he had promoted him twice. So he can't say he didn't at least hear about him being a racist. And so he was even willing to promote somebody who was saying racist things about himself. So that to me, that shows a lot of beta male characteristics. And I think that the sheriff here, he's a lot more open to suggestions than people think. He's not this this hardcore dictator that he's being painted, I feel, unfairly. Because what I've come to find out, a lot of people that have said negative things about him have never even met him. So, like I said, I had those same perceptions. I met him, and I have a different perspective. And so, for those that are out there, trust me, he's nothing like he's being painted out to be. So,
Well, to me, being a Marine Corps veteran, an Army veteran, and a police officer for over 23 years, I believe that police officers follow courage, honor, dignity, respect, honesty. They don't follow stars, bars, or stripes. So it doesn't matter what you have on your collar, it's the person inside who they're going to follow. Luna is a weak leader, and he's a very dishonest person. So those dishonest people gravitate towards each other, and that's who he gravitates to. And being a weak leader, like Mark said, he follows the strongest voice there. And unfortunately, the people he surrounds with himself are bad people. They're racist. They're just vindictive people. So that's what the decisions he makes based on the loudest voice in the room. Now, it's really important that we have honor and respect and dignity in the command staff, because that trickles down. When officers see their leadership behave a certain way, then they feel they can behave a certain way. And then that trickles down to the way they're going to treat people in the community. He's a very dishonest person. And like Quincy said, he portrays himself as a soft-spoken person. He portrays himself as a soft-spoken person because he wants to hide who he really is, and because he's a weak person. If he wasn't a weak person, he wouldn't portray himself that way. He would portray himself with a lot more confidence. And the reason the board is backing him so greatly is because, like I said earlier, in Long Beach, he was never held accountable for anything because the mayor, the city council covered for him for everything. So he feels that if he complies with every decision the board makes, they're going to back him up when he messes something up, because guaranteed he will. He's incompetent. And he needs the backing of the board to cover for him when he screws up. And I guarantee he's going to screw up. And like he said, we're here because we know him. I worked around him for over 23 years. I know him personally. And what I'm saying is exactly true.
You know, this is a good time to ask you this question. Get a reaction to the fact that we just learned that two prominent private defense attorneys, one of is Mario Trujillo, and the other one is attorney Rosenberg, are holding a fundraiser for Robert Luna. And to me, that speaks volumes that we have two defense attorneys, one which was severely connected to, very connected to George Gascon executive team. So we know if he's connected to George Gascon, he's connected to George Soros, and here you have it. And during one of the debates, Luna himself said that he's been speaking to people from throughout the country, and you'll bring them in. What does that say?
That's a perfect statement of who he is. We need a sheriff that's independent, that isn't going to be influenced by anybody, because his main duty is to protect the citizens of the county. And if he's going to be basing his decisions on what his political cronies think, and he's going to make his decision on what they want to do, then that's not the sheriff we want. We want a sheriff that's going to go against what they want and look at what's best for the community and his employees. Because if he looks out for his employees, the employees are going to work hard and they're going to do the right thing. And that leadership trickles down. And Luna's already is saying to everybody that I'm just a puppet. What do you want me to do? How do you want me to behave? And as long as you back me up when my incompetence comes through, that's all I need.
Your turn, Darrin.
Wow, where do I start? Mike's warm. Okay, let me start off with this. I actually hired on the Long Beach Police Department 2 years before Luna. And I watched him go through the ranks. And I supported him because he was a young minority going through the ranks of the Long Beach Police Department, which at that time was primarily all male white. And I supported him all the way up until he made a switch about the time we were going through the Quincy Miles case. And I actually went to then Luna and said, hey, what's going on? He was the deputy chief. Is you have a racist command staff that's going after this African-American police officer that's not appropriate. You need to do something. And he just blew me off. And I was kind of put off by that, because being a senior officer, normally when you talk to command staff personnel, they at least listen to what you have to say, and then they go course correct and move on. What Mark said made a whole bunch of sense. There was a point in time in there when he made that switch, and he assimilated toward everything that was bad about the Long Beach Police Department. And he allowed it to occur. And he promoted individuals that did things that were just inappropriate. We had a sergeant who actually had his firearm stolen out of his office. And what was it, 30 days later or something? All of a sudden, it just reappeared. Nothing ever came of that. We've had several African-American police officers who made complaints toward Luna and the staff, and it actually came back on them. They went from being the victim to being the suspect. I also looked at, I'm really big in recruitment of everyone, but in particular, minority officers. Because when I hired on the Long Beach Police Department in 1985, there were only 14 African Americans out of 628 officers. My goal when I was assigned to the academy was to increase the number of minority officers on the police department, along with women, along with Asians, and those who gay and lesbian and things of that nature. And I accomplished those goals, and our numbers were really high. All of a sudden, our numbers started to decline. And when Luna was the chief of police, we had 2 police academies. 2 police academies with absolutely no African Americans in them. And when he was called to task, he simply came out and said, I couldn't find them. I have a problem with that. And
I found plenty.
He said,
yeah.
No, that's when he said he's gonna lower the test scores.
Or no, that was the second time.
That was the second. No, he's gonna change. He's gonna take reading and writing out.
So he's gonna make it more scenario based. I'm gonna eliminate the reading and writing.
So
basically, he's saying that blacks and Latinos can't read or write.
Right, and that wasn't what needed to be done. You know, when I worked at police academy, I went out to the churches and I found men and women and brought them into the Long Beach Police Department. That's why we have this excellent ex-homicide detective here. Now, when I come and I talk to this gentleman here, I'm like the rest of them. I didn't think the conversation was going to go well. When you really look at the narrative, I sat down and for 4 or 5 hours, I'm with this man, 110%, because number one, he's a leader. You know, you may not agree with everything, but he makes a decision and he follows through with it. And if he sees somebody out there that's doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, he'll course correct them or eliminate them. And I'm going to hold him to that. I'm going to hold him to that. And when it comes to recruiting, we've talked about the hiring of more minorities, because at the end of the day, you can come up with all the different laws, rules, and people will figure out how to get around those. But for African Americans, we need to recruit, put them in the seats of those black and whites, promote them through the system, make them lieutenants, captains, and so that other young kids can look at them and inspire to be like them, and then we'll stop a lot of the things that go on out there merely by the numbers themselves. So that's why I support him. And I know the other guy is not they've all said it. There's no leadership there at all. He's going to let somebody else do it, right, wrong, or indifferent. And, you know, unless he gets called to task, it is going to be what it's going to be. And he's going to be that puppet. He was the puppet in Long Beach. I talked to a detective today. This detective has 240 open cases. You can't work 240 open cases. And a lot of the detectives within the Long Beach Police Department have caseloads similar to that, or 100 plus. As the chief of police, what he should have done is gone back to the people over in City Hall and say, I need 100 more officers on the Long Beach Police Department so that we can bring these caseloads down and deal with crime within the city. But he didn't. And he's not going to do that with the sheriff's department. It's just not going to happen because he's going to be that puppet. So I applaud you. I'm 110% behind you, sir. If there's anything I can do, even when you become sheriff again or get reelected, if there's anything I can do, call me. I will be there for you 110%.
Before I pass it over, Mark, how many years of service?
25.
25. So collectively sitting here, we have over 85 years of law enforcement service between you all when we add your years of service up. So for folks,
I take them over the 100.
Yeah, yeah, he takes them over. You know, I didn't add yours in there. Yet listening, so Mark, Quincy, Albert, Darrin, I was taking notes, and some of the attributes that you gave to him, it is a leader, a firm leader that listens, engages, he's personable, he's open. We've determined that you're not a dictator. You're honorable, you're honest, you're independent. And you take those 85 years of service, it matters. So for people who are watching this, whether you're watching it live or you're watching it later, these are individuals from my community of Long Beach, that are taking a stand. And I want to thank you all for one. I mean, I know you're law enforcement officers, and you guys get to carry a gun and everything, but thank you for your bravery. Thank you for your bravery and speaking truth to power, speaking truth to community. And I'm gonna hold y'all accountable for holding him accountable. And if he doesn't win, I'm gonna hold y'all accountable for holding the other guy accountable. So pass it over to you for you to close it out. I know you had something that you wanted to share, but so you can respond and then close out. So again, my name is Jerlene Tatum. We've been here with Mark, Quincy, Albert, Darrin, with the sheriff, and thank you for your time and thank you for allowing us to be in your space.
Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you for a wonderful job of moderating. She's a pro. Look how organized she is. No, I feel like, oh man, I'm gonna have to get myself all squared away here. This is really cool because we're hearing voices that matter. Every voice matters, but voices that have a particular knowledge, perspective, and experience on this issue should be at the forefront of every single media outlet that is not reporting on any of this. And the question is, why are they not reporting? Where is their due diligence? When I ran in 2018, about the only thing they said about me is there was more ducks in the pond than there were supporters for my campaign when I announced. And we counted the ducks. Yeah, okay, there was a couple more ducks. But then that became 1.3 million people. So obviously we had an impact. And that was in spite of the media. They kept saying that we couldn't win. And that same media now is now trying to say that the challenger is supposedly going to win because I don't have a prayer. And I just don't buy that at all. I think the corporate media has sold their soul to the devil a long time ago. And let's end the manipulation. Let's go based on facts. And 3 times I've challenged Mr. Luna to a debate. 3 times he's turned me down. And why should the incumbent challenge the challenger? Isn't it the other way around? When did this happen? And there's a reason why he doesn't want to debate me head to head on the same stage, because he can't. He has no plan to do absolutely anything. His whole thing is, well, I'm going to get along with the board of supervisors. Great. How is that going to get us anywhere? Is that going to take more homeless off the street? Is that going to stop violent crime? Is that going to stop the public corruption that the county is rife with? Of course not. He fits right in because he was recruited to fit into a corrupt system. And I don't have the answers to everything. I may be rough around the edges, particularly for people who are married to failed policies. My job is to call out failure because I want them to succeed. My whole goal in county government is I want them to succeed and be a good partner with law enforcement so we can cure homelessness is destroying our communities. We can curb violent crime. We can save our kids from doing stupid things that's going to kill their life, if not by a bullet, because they wind up behind bars. And those are lives that are being lost because of incompetence, negligence, and a political will that is, let's not do anything, that where no one can be wrong if we don't do anything. No, they're dead wrong because the fate of the county is at stake right now. For the next 12 days starting tomorrow, we're going to release Luna's Dirty Dozen, 12 reasons not to vote for Robert Luna. And Robert, if you're listening to me, you had the opportunity 3 times to debate me publicly, and we could discuss all these 12 things. And you choose to run and hide. That's not sheriff material there. Sorry there. What do you call it? Bunker Bob? Is that how they refer to him? But I think we're on the right track. I think people are realizing the fate of the county is at stake, and we can address things right up front. We can all sit down in a room and figure out what we don't know yet how to solve. But our track record, the Sheriff's Department, homelessness, 100% success rate, no arrests, no force. Why are we not scaling up to fit the entire county? Why not? Political will. So the new Board of Supervisors is going to be seated in December. We need for the vote to send them a loud and clear message. We're here to regulate public space. We're here to get people off the street. And this whole idea, let's not do anything, That's not compassion. That's willful neglect. And who are the people that are dying on the street? Are black and brown people. They're dying 5 a day like clockwork. Over 1,600 last year alone. Who mourns for them? The people that engage in virtue signaling from their ivory tower because they know best? The ones that want to say, let's get all the cops off the trains because the passengers are frightful of cops. How is that working out for you? When they're setting passengers on fire, or cutting them in half, or stabbing them, or shooting them, or robbing them, or raping them. How is that working for a passenger on a train? This message directly to the Board of Supervisors. And we need to hold everyone accountable, including me. You guys hold me accountable, all right? And make sure I keep going down the path I'm going. I will not yield from that path. And if someone proves me wrong, I'm more than happy to say, you know what, you're right, I was wrong, and we'll change course. But it's going to require proof, not political gamemanship. That's not proof. And with that, I want to close out and thank everyone for being here, everyone who was brave enough to listen to everything from start to finish with interruptions. You guys are winners on this. And please share this with your family and friends. And tomorrow will be the first installment of Mr. Luna's Dirty Dozen, and we'll play one a day. And I want to thank everyone behind the cameras. Can we get them out in front of the camera real quick? This is kind of special. Let's see can we do this? Yeah, come on. We got to get the crew out. Come on, Rod, you too. You're part of the crew.
Hit the doors.
Yeah.
More years of
They're kind of
service.
shy.
I'm on crew right here.
There you go. We got the crew here. We got Jason.
How you got your count?
And we got one more, Moses. Can you make it? Everybody's probably very familiar with Moses Faith and Vintage LA. Very good website. And if the corporate media doesn't want to cover us, doesn't mean the public can't see us. So let's get that message out there. Thank you all.
Thank you.